Hello and welcome to Narayana Eyes. I am Pratik, your faculty for daily news analysis. Students, in today's session, we have chosen four important topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. Of the four topics, one will be for the mains and the remaining three will be for the prelims examination. Right? So, before we begin today's session, right, let us go through a motivational quote so that you are motivated enough to understand all the four topics that we shall be discussing and making sure that you understand each and every dimension so that you can recall in the examination or whenever you are writing an examination. So, what is today's motivational quote? Take a deep breath and try all over again. At times, you do not get success in the first go. For example, when it comes to UPSC CSE, not everyone clears the examination in the first go. Few people clear prelims, mains, interview. At times you clear mains but you fail to clear interview. Then again you need to start from the pre. So at times this exercise, this process becomes too exhausting to absorb. And whenever the situation is becoming too exhausting, take a deep breath. Whenever you are disturbed emotionally or let's say psychologically, always try to imbibe or develop this practice of deep breathing. Whenever you deep breathe, like inhaling and exhaling, a sense of calm, your mind will sort of be in that state of calm whenever you are, inhaling as well as exhaling. So always have this habit whenever you are disturbed, right? Let's say you're having a fight, quarrel, or like disturbed, always take a deep breath. This will sort of iron out, solve much of your problems, right? So before we begin the four topics, we have an announcement to make. Narayana soon is going to launch 1 year and 2 year prelims cum means integrated program. All those students interested can scan the QR code available on your screen, fill in the required details, and our team will get back to you. Right? So let us go to the topics that we shall be discussing today. The first topic is taken from Indian Express page number 10. Now what I've done is there were many articles or rather topics that appeared in the Hindu paper, Indian Express. These articles or topics, it was discussing about the recent terrorist attack at Pahalgam and which were the security gaps and what can be done in order to prevent such terrorist attacks. Right, so I've clubbed all the articles and prepared a comprehensive article on the topic terrorism or let's say the border management. Right, so this we shall be discussing for the means examination. We shall be analyzing terrorism definition, causes, types of terrorism, the gaps, the security gaps that we have in our security apparatus and what can be done in the future to prevent attacks. The second topic is taken from Hindu page number 14. Now in this article, Supreme Court is going to examine a section of the POCSO Act, right? So we'll understand which is a section, what is POCSO, that is Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act. So we'll understand about the act and the provisions under the act and the section that the Supreme Court is examining. The third article is taken from Hindu page number 11. Here the topic is the World Trade Organization still relevant? Given the unilateral tariffs imposed by the United States of America and the developing countries being helpless, does it mean that a country is more powerful than an international organization? Does it mean that an international organization whose mandate was to ensure that the trade rules are practiced in an unbiased manner which helps both the developing as well as the underdeveloped countries, whether the influence of WTO is waning, is coming down? This is what we shall be understanding. Especially we'll focus on WTO. The fourth article talks about a suggestion given by Supreme Court to the center where wherever there is a, let's say, uncontested election, is it okay for a candidate who does not have a opposition or a second candidate to declare him the winner? right? Let's say, for example, now in elections we see that there are more than one candidates who contest for one constituency. What about when there is no other candidate to contest the election? There's only one candidate. So is it okay to declare that candidate who has no opposition as winner? So this is what we shall be discussing in the fourth topic. Right, let us get started with the first topic. The title is Infiltration, the key problem. In this article, we shall be understanding the border security and management, and this article is a perfect fit for mains. Under mains, we have security challenges and their management in border areas. Now, few of the points are also important for prelims, as a reason I have mentioned here, prelims as well. Now, why is it important to discuss such topics? Because of the importance of such topics in the examination, as it can be manifested in the year 2019. A question was asked on cross-border movement of insurgents is only one of the several security challenges facing the policing of the border in Northeast India. Examine the various challenges currently arising across the India-Myanmar border. Now, given so many attacks are happening along the India-Pakistan border, question on India-Pakistan or the cross-border movement can also be asked in the examination. The recent attack, terrorist attack, is an example of cross-border terrorism. Let us understand the context. We know that recently a terrorist attack had, occurred in Pahalgam, which is in Jammu and Kashmir, and because of the attack, there was an emotional outburst, political outburst. People were disturbed across the country. Not only people in our country, but people across the globe were disturbed because of the heinous crime perpetrated on the common people. Right, and given the frequent attacks happening not only along the India-Pakistan border but also along the India-Myanmar and India-Bangladesh border, it is very important for India to make sure that we respond swiftly. But the response should not be arbitrary. It should be calibrated, calculated. It should be united, and it should be effective in the sense it should help in long run. It should help in long run. So the situation that we are in, it demands emotional clarity and strategic restraint. It demands strategic restraint. That is, one cannot take a decision on the basis of emotions. No, it has to be backed by a certain strategy. Why? Because it is very important to create deterrence. Deterrence, so that Pakistan should think 1,000 times before attacking or supporting the terrorists. So it is important that we create deterrence so that Pakistan should not even think of attacking India. Because if the situation escalates, both the countries may, fight a war, maybe engulfed in a war, which is not good for both the countries, because so many lives and families will be completely shattered. So this is the context. So let us try to understand. First and foremost, what is the meaning or what understands by the term terrorism? See, terrorism is no universal accepted definition of terrorism. Why? Because a terrorist for one country is a freedom fighter for another. For example, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed. These terrorists are terrorists for India, but for Pakistan, they are, or not. When I say Pakistan, not the entire country, because I believe that you cannot label the entire country as terrorists. Of course, there are crores of people who feel that relations between India and Pakistan should be good, but the extremist people, for them, such people are freedom fighters, right? But terrorism, if we have to define terrorism, which means unlawful and violent activity. What is terrorism? It's an unlawful and violent activity. The purpose The purpose is to instill. The purpose is to instill fear in the minds of people. Yes, Kunal, any question? Kunal, please. Any question? Let me know. Right? So terrorism means unlawful and violent activity. The purpose is to instill fear in the minds of people. The purpose is to instill fear in the minds of people, influence the government and society, to influence the actions of the government and society so that the government and society listens to what the terrorists want, right? And what is the goal? The goal can be political, or let's say ideological, or let's say strategic goal. For example, the separatists in Kashmir want a separate Kashmir. The separatists in Sikh, or let's say in Punjab, they want a separate Khalistan. So this is what we understand by the meaning of the word terrorism. So I'm in 10th class newspaper headline, what I study for UPSC. Kunal, as you are in the 10th standard, right? This is a, I mean, this is, it's a good time to start preparing for the UPSC examination. But in order to make yourself prepared, Kunal, what you can do is you can start reading the newspaper. Which newspaper? You can read either the Hindu or Indian Express. And why I say Hindu or Indian Express? Because majority of the aspirants who are preparing for the UPSC examination, they read either the Hindu or Indian Express. So what you can do is you can simply start reading the newspaper, right? For example, every day, right, in the Telegram group, we send one document, and the name of the document is Daily News Read. So you can download the PDF of that file, and you should understand which are the topics to be read in the Hindu paper or the Indian Express. For example, there's so many topics. There's so many topics in the Hindu and Indian Express. But to understand which topic is important, okay, my voice is not clear. Okay, Kunal. Prasanjit, it seems the voice is not clear. It seems the voice is not clear. Okay, Kunal, if you can rejoin us, okay, you can rejoin so that maybe the sound may be better. So please rejoin the live lecture so that it may help. It can solve the problem. Okay, are you able to hear me, Kunal? Now it is clear. Okay, so Kunal, what do I suggest is you can download Daily News Read, right? DNR, Daily News Read document, right, which we post on our website as well as the Telegram channel. In the Daily News Read, you'll come across a list of topics that you need to read in the Hindu or Indian Express paper. Why? Because there are so many topics in the Hindu or Indian Express. But to understand which topics to read for the examination, that's the reason we publish the Daily News Read document in on our website as well as the Telegram channel. Alright, so what you can do is you can simply download the copy and then you can start reading the newspaper. One. Second, what you can do is you can start reading the NCERT books as well. Right? NCERT books from class 6th onwards until class 12th. Or what you can do is you can download our application. You can download Narayana's application. We have launched NCERT course. Right, for all the students who are beginners, we have launched NCERT course. We are covering subjects like polity, economy, history, geography, and it's very affordable. I do not know the exact price, but it's very affordable. Anyone can buy it. So please download the Narayana IS Academy. There are few videos on YouTube as well. These are the free demo videos which you can find on our YouTube channel as well. You can download the application and also subscribe to the course, which is super affordable, right? And then newspaper and inserting. Focus on these two things parallelly, and within a year or let's say 2, you can command over the basic concepts and the ongoing developments. Understood, Kunal? Fine. So, coming back to this topic, so we understood the definition of terrorism. Now, please remember, India adopts a zero tolerance policy, which means our tolerance towards terrorism is zero. We do not accept terrorism of any form. But as there is no universal accepted definition of terrorism, it is difficult for India to classify certain acts under terrorism. And this actually comes in the way of India to prosecute the crimes falling under terrorism. So I hope you understood the meaning of the word terrorism. Now let us try to understand the emerging form of terrorism. Lone wolf attack. Lone wolf, which means one person, let's say few people. There is no group, no organization, a crime is committed by one person or let's say few people. Now these lone wolf people, they get inspired from let's say the terrorist groups. The terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, Taliban, they run online propaganda. They use online medium to let's say radicalize people, brainwash people, and these people influenced by the ideology of these extremist groups, they commit terror. These are referred to as lone wolf attacks, and it is very difficult for the intelligence agencies to intercept such lone wolf attacks because they are actually operating outside a chain of command. The second, bioterrorism risk, the COVID-19 pandemic, which means that terrorists can use virus, bacteria. Using these viruses, they can inflict casualty damage in an enemy's territory. This is referred to as bioterrorism risks. So the terrorist groups, they can let's say as and how the technology is evolving, these people, or let's say if such bio the bacteria's viruses, it comes in the hands of the terrorists, they can use this to perpetrate crime in the countries they intend to. So this is another form. Unmanned or drone attacks, using drones either to smuggle weapons, to smuggle let's say smuggle goods, you never know. So they are using drones to attack an enemy. For example, in the year 2022, the Air Force station in Jammu was attacked using drones, which means the drones, there is hardly any casualty. And these days, the commercial drones have become very cheap. So the terrorists can use drones to inflict damage in an enemy's territory, and that is very, very dangerous for a country given the border that we share across Pakistan, along India, along Pakistan, also Myanmar and Bangladesh as well as China. So this is another form, that is drone threat. Terrorist safe havens. Now in places where the governance is very poor, for example Bangladesh, Myanmar, right, or Pakistan, the terrorists, they use these countries as safe haven. They use this country in the sense, they use this country to train the terrorists, manipulate, brainwash the terrorists, and then once they're trained, they send it to the country or area they plan to attack. Terror crime nexus, which means here there is nexus, link between the terrorists and the organized criminals. Now, who are the organized criminals? Who are involved in the business of money laundering, smuggling of gold, smuggling of weapons. So these two people, these two entities, they coordinate with one another to help other. Now the motive of the organized criminals is to earn profits. The motive of terrorists is to, let's say, inflict damage in an enemy's territory. tech-driven terrorism, which means the terrorists are using sophisticated technology like, let's say, encrypted application, right? Then thermal sensors. So using advanced sophisticated technology, the terrorists, they intend to attack the enemy and inflict damage, psychological damage, physical damage. So these are the emerging forms of terrorism. Yeah. Okay, so I hope you understood the emerging forms of terrorism. Now let us try to understand the causes of terrorism. First is political cause. Now political cause can be, let's say for example, the Khalistanis, they want to, let's say, carve out a separate region for the Sikh people, that is Khalistan. So they want to actually cut a part of India, divide that part from India and make that area as a separate country, Khalistan, Kashmiris. The separatist groups in Kashmir, what they want? They want a separate Kashmir for the Kashmiris. So, for the sake of, let's say, Khalistan, for the sake of, let's say, Kashmir, or let's say the ethnic insurgents in India's northeast. Now, they want to have a separate state for people belonging to their ethnicity. Or let's say the Lashkar-e, the LTT group, which sort of fought a civil war against the Sri Lankan government until 2009. So their goal, the LTT goal was to, let's say, demand a separate country for the sake of Tamilians. Elam, strategic cause. Now strategic cause can be, for example, now this strategic cause, this method is used by, let's say, a weaker country against a powerful country. For example, the Hamas, right? We know there's a war going on between Palestine and Israel. Now the Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, what they do is they use terrorism for strategic purpose. They use terrorism for, let's say, political leverage. For political leverage. Because Hamas is no match in front of the Israelis. So what they do is they let's say attack in isolation, right? They use terrorism for what? To gain some political leverage, right? So that they force Israelis to listen to the demands of the Palestinians. Socio-economic causes, for example, poverty, lack of development. For example, if I talk about the Naxalites, who are the Naxalites? They are the tribal people. Now, initially, why they waged a war against the Indian state was because of the rampant poverty and no development. So, the tribals, they still feel that the Indian state is exploiting the resources of the areas inhabited by the tribals. Or let's say whenever people face injustice, discrimination, they resort. Naxalism is a perfect example of socio-economic causes. Religious causes, using religion to justify violence. For example, the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, what these people do is they use religion to justify violence, which means the purpose, for example, the purpose of ISIS is to establish caliphate. So they are fighting for the sake of religion. So causes of terrorism can be multifold: political, socio-economic, strategic purpose. I hope you understood the causes of terrorism. Now let us try to understand the major terrorism related challenges that India faces. So which are the type or terrorism related challenges India faces? One is cross border terrorism. Now, what do you mean by cross-border terrorism? People are crossing one border and they are entering into other country. For example, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Hizbul Mujahideen, these are the terrorist groups operating from Pakistan. So Pakistani military supports these terrorist groups. They fund them, they train them, they provide them weapons, and these terrorists, they cross the border, enter India and attack the Indian people. This is referred to as cross-border terrorism. Left-wing extremism is referred to Naxalism. Naxalism, it operates in the central and the eastern part of India, especially Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. Though the influence of Naxal affected areas has shrunk, but still Naxalism is one of India's major challenges that India is facing. Again, if I talk about the origin of Naxalism, it was because of social and economic causes, but now they want to completely overpower state. They want to completely overthrow the state, which completely is unconstitutional. Now they do not want development. They want that the government should not exist. We want to own the government. We want to be a part of the government. This is what they aspire for. Now, whenever India tries to, let's say, improve the situation, they do not allow the government officials to undertake the development work. Naxalism, left-wing extremism, separatist movements and militancy. For example, in Kashmir, the Islamic separatists, the Kashmiri separatists, the Hurriyats, right? Or for that matter, the Khalistanis, the Sikh for Justice is one separatist movement. Then we have so many groups in India's northeast. For example, the Nationalist Socialist Council of Nagaland, the Isaac Muiwa, sorry, the Khaplang group, National Democratic Front of Bodoland. What are these? All these groups are separatist movements, which means they want to carve out a separate land for the people of their religion, people of their ethnicity, people of their caste. Radicalization and online propaganda. What is radicalization? To completely brainwash a person. As how the young people in Pakistan and let's say in Kashmir are radicalized in the name of religion, which means the terrorists right from a young age, they are brainwashed to an extent where they are taught to hate India. They are taught to hate people belonging to all other religions except for their own religion. Again, I am not going to name the religion. It's self understood, right? So the point is radicalization. Young people get brainwashed and they commit heinous crime. Why? Because they are radicalized from a very young age. So this radicalization has to stop. Online propaganda. Now, because of the advent of technology, the terrorists are using technology. They're using technology for what? To spread panic, to spread fear in the minds of people. Cyber terrorism. Now, given that India is, gradually getting connected digitally, which means all the important infrastructure or important data is stored on the online platforms. So cyber terrorism, which means using computers, using technology to steal data, to steal strategic information, information pertaining to national security. This is cyber. So we often hear news where China using cyber terrorism or using technology, they try to steal data, they try to hack the systems. Pakistan's exit from Financial Action Task Force. Now, what is Financial Action Task Force? This is an organization that fights against the money that is being used for the sake of terrorism. Now, Pakistan was in the watch list under the FATF. Why? Because FATF believe that Pakistan is funding the terrorists. But now Pakistan has been moved out of the FATF grey list, which means FATF believes that Pakistan has stopped funding the terrorists. Now here India has to play a major role. India has to convince the international community that how Pakistan continues to support terrorists. So these are the major terrorism related challenges that India faces. Now, which are the domestic legal framework? How do we fight? How India fights against terrorism? First is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. This is India's primary anti-terror law, which means whenever a case of terrorism is filed in our country, a person is prosecuted under, which means a charged under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Now this act allows the government of India to designate individuals and organizations as terrorists. So if, let's say, if government of India believes that this person is involved in terrorism, this person is punished under which law? Under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So the prosecution is carried out under UAPA. The next one is the National Investigation Agency Act. Now this act allowed for the establishment of National Investigation Agency. So what this agency does is, it investigates all the terror related cases happening in our entire country, which means there has to be coordination with different state polices, different agencies. It investigates and then prosecutes people and organizations who are, let's say, who are involved in terrorism related activities. So this agency is premier in the sense it deals with all the terror related cases. So NIA prosecutes individuals or organizations under which law? Under UAPA. Got it? Then we have institutional framework. For example, we have the National Security Council Secretariat. Now what this secretariat does is, it actually coordinates national security policies with the different departments and different ministries under Government of India. For example, let's say it can be electronics and telecommunication, it can be power, it can be railways. So it coordinates national security policies across different departments and ministries. Ministry of Home Affairs, it is the nodal agency when it comes to internal security of our country, which means the Ministry of Home Affairs, it plans, it executes counter terrorism related activities. It gathers the intelligence. Using intelligence, it then decides which action is to be taken. Then National Investigation Agency, we already have discussed in the last slide. Next, international commitments. So these are some conventions. We have signed these conventions. For example, this convention, it actually prevents the diplomats and foreign secretaries during war. So these are some international conventions. You can read about all these conventions in the DNA notes. Please find the link of the DNA notes in the description or on our website. Key security gaps exposed by the Pahalgam. Now recently we know that just 2 days back, right, the terrorists attacked the Pahalgam region in Jammu and Kashmir. So the experts have actually found, or experts have analyzed, the security gaps existing in the system. Which one? Infiltration through difficult terrain. Now what the terrorists, what they do is, they actually choose dense forests, which means forests where intelligence is very difficult, surveillance is difficult, to track the movement is very difficult. Why? Because in the dense jungle, these terrorists, they get natural cover. So they're using dense jungle, rugged terrain. Why? So as to take cover, take natural cover, and that's the reason the terrorists are exploiting difficult terrain to their advantage, because of which Indians are finding it difficult, let's say, to track the movement of terrorists as well as to gather the intelligence. So they're using geography to their advantage. incomplete and damaged anti-infiltration fencing, which means the entire line of control does not have, or it is lacking full fencing so that to stop the terrorists from coming into India. Or at times what happens is the fencing gets damaged. Why? Because of weather related events, like we have landslides, we have avalanches, we have snow slides. So the fencing gets damaged, because of which, or this actually leaves gaps in our security system. The next one is underperformance of security infrastructure. Now, CIBMS. What is CIBMS? Comprehensive Integrated Border Management System. What? Comprehensive Integrated Border Management System. Now, the purpose of this management system is to use technology. Technology like drones, thermal images, sensors, right? Using this technology to improve the surveillance is the purpose of this comprehensive integrated border management system. Then, but because of the limitations in technology, because of poor funding, because of lack of coordination within the government of India, the implementation of this system is poor. Next, intelligence and tracking limitation. Now, as I told you, right, the terrorists, they have sophisticated technology. So in order to, let's say, avoid detection, they use radio silence. They use sophisticated advanced technology. Using advanced technology, they avoid detection, which means whenever they attack and escape, it becomes difficult for the intelligence agencies to track the movement. Why? Because of the technology they are using, which avoids detection. Last, strategic relocation of militancy. Now see, because of heavy terror related incidents in regions like Rajouri and Poonch, so Indians, or what the Indian government did, or what the military, there was heavy deployment in these regions. Now given there was heavy deployment in this region, the terrorists chose those places where there is no security presence. For example, the Pahalgam. So they chose the areas where, which is less guarded, and they attacked those places. So these are the gaps, right, that is existing in our security apparatus. Any question, please let me know. Okay. Now, comprehensive measures India can adopt to curb the menace of terrorism. First, prioritizing prevention over reaction, which means what we do is we only react. Once an attack happens, then we start talking about the security gaps. So why don't we create a system wherein the terrorists cannot enter India? We, before neutralizing them, let us take all the steps to prevent their infiltration into India. This is one step. Second, strengthening the border infrastructure and surveillance, which essentially means that you had to erect anti-infiltration fencing across all the line of control, and it should be weather resistant, which means no weather related activity should damage the fencing. Then we had to focus on the comprehensive integrated border management system, wherein you had to use technology. There has to be funding, there has to be coordination across different ministries, and you need to use weather resistant technology, be it drones, be it sensors. Then we have motion sensors, seismic detectors, drones, artificial intelligence based system. Use technology. Building an integrated national counter terrorism. Now there has to be a national database. Now this database should have all the information, which means all the intelligence agencies or all the law enforcement agencies should send the data, and this is a national database that we should create, which actually consolidates intelligence from all the, let's say, financial institutions, law enforcement officials. Enhancing local intelligence. No technology can match the local intelligence, that is the people, the common people. So here we have to spread awareness, right? We have to spread awareness so as to detect early signs of radicalization. Any suspicious movement should be tracked, and that is only possible when the common people are trained. And of course, it is very important to also focus on socio-economic development. So if there is no socio-economic development, if there is no socio-economic development, people will fall trap to the radicalization, people will fall trap to brainwashing. So if you focus on social and economic development, you can win the confidence of people. This confidence, these people will provide intel, they will become your intel. Next, empowering communities, that's what I explained you. Open source intel, what is this? Here you have to train the police, equipping police with skills to analyze open source data from social media and public. So how to extract data from social media and public platforms so as to track the radicalization trends, what's happening in the society, where the society is heading towards, to understand the propaganda. So this is the training that we have to train the police. Strengthening cyber. Now these are few points that you can read by your own from the DNA notes, right? Make sure you are downloading the link from the or downloading the DNA notes and you read the content of the first topic. I hope we have covered this topic comprehensively, right? So make sure you revise this topic, you read each and every point. Any point where you have confusion, please I request you to ask the question in the comment section. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions, right? So the DNA notes is available on the Telegram channel, on the website, right? And also in the link. Next, Supreme Court to examine concerns on POCSO case. So, what is POCSO? Prevention of Children from Sexual Offence. We'll understand about this particular law. You can map this under GS paper 2, that is under governance. Now, question on national child policy has been asked in the examination in the year 2018. That's the reason we understand this particular issue. Now, what is the issue? Now, please remember that Supreme Court is trying to examine concerns related about section 19. So this is a law and section 19 is a section of law which the Supreme Court is trying to examine. Now what does this section 19 state? It states that it mandates to report all sexual activity involving minors even if it is consensual, happening by agreement, through agreement. So all the sexual activity has to be reported involving minors even if it is happening with consent. This should be reported. This is what the law says. Section 19 states, right? Now, a senior advocate, Indira Jaising, she raised a petition against section 19 stating that this section 19 is actually leading to criminalization of adolescence, which means the adolescents are being, or let's say they are being charged, and that's the reason because of the criminalization of adolescents, which is posing a risk to their health. Indira Jaising wants that this law should be scrapped. And the court has acknowledged the seriousness of the issue and is hearing the concerns from various parties. So first and foremost, we'll try to understand what is POCSO. POCSO, please remember, it came into force in the year 2012 when India ratified UN Convention on the Rights of Child in the year of 1992. So India said, yes, we abide by the principles and we are ready to follow the principles of this UN Convention, and a law was made in our country. It came into force in the year 2012. Now it was designed, which means Any crime that involves violence, sexual violence, abuse against children, against the minor, India has a dedicated law to fight against cases or to deal with cases involving exploitation, sexual exploitation against the minors. Initially, we had vague provisions involving children, but now we have a dedicated law dealing with sexual offences against the minors. Now, who is a child? Anyone who is below the age of 18 is considered to be a child, and the punishment will be given in proportion to the crime happened. In 19, the law was made more strict, which means in cases dealing with child sexual abuse, even death penalty can be avoided by the court. This was the amendment in the year 2019. I hope you understood what exactly is POCSO Act. Now, what are the key provisions of the Act? One, it is gender neutral, which means the Act says that not only a girl, even a boy can be a victim. The purpose of this POCSO Act is to prevent children, doesn't matter if it's a boy or girl, because the law believes that both boys and girls can be the victims of child sexual abuse. That's the reason it's a gender neutral nature. One. Second, ease in reporting cases. Now, earlier, what used to happen is that the law enforcement officials were not reporting the crime because of the nexus. But now the law says that if the case is not reported, it is a punishable offense. Action can be taken against the, let's say, police officials, law enforcement officials. Because of this provision, the cases that are being registered have increased significantly. This second provision. Explicit definition. Now, earlier, there were few terms which were very vague. For example, outraging the modesty. What do you mean by outraging the modesty? This term was not clear. That's the reason now explicit, which means what exactly one understands by the term sexual offense, or let's say sexual assault, is clearly defined in the law. Next, POCSO rules 2020. Now the amendment that was done in the year 2020 allows the court to grant interim compensation and special relief to child. Why? Let's say to deal with child's urgent needs, like let's say care and rehabilitation. So until the decision is taken, for the interim period, the court can award compensation, relief to the child, let's say why, for his rehabilitation, for let's say physical need, emotional need, mental need. Next, support person for child. Now the act mandates that the child welfare committee should assign a support person for the child. Why? Because let's say now the cases which will take a lot of time. Now for the investigation, for the court procedure, there will be a support person who will assist the child in terms of or for matters related to the court procedure. And then fast track. Now to ensure timely justice, the government has launched centrally sponsored scheme in 19 to establish 1000 fast track courts. There are 389 courts exclusively for POCSO cases. So these are the provisions under the POCSO Act. I hope you understood the second topic, right? The third article. Third article talks about the World Trade Organization, whether it is relevant or it is not relevant. So here we'll understand about the WTO. A question on WTO was asked in the examination. Okay, this is an incorrect question. So, fine. let's try to understand the context. What is the context? The experts are trying to analyze whether the importance of WTO, World Trade Organization, has reduced. Why? Because the way United States is behaving by imposing unilateral tariff, which means United States is not following the rules framed by the WTO. So what's the relevance? What's the use of WTO? First, let us try to understand about WTO. What is it? It's the only international body that deals with the global rules of trade. How the trade in the world between countries has to be carried out. Who makes the rules? WTO. For example, when it comes to developed countries like USA, the European countries and developing countries like India, the WTO says that the developing countries like India can provide a subsidy of 10% to the farmers. Subsidies in the form of, let's say, solar panel, pesticides. But when it comes to developed countries, the developed countries can provide subsidy of 5%. Why? Because when the government is helping the farmers, let's say, to produce a crop with minimal expenditure, they can raise maximum profit. There's a reason this is one such rule that the WTO frames. It aims to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably and freely as possible, which means there should be no interruption in the trade. The trade should be seamless, the trade should be free, the trade should be without any imposition, which means India should not say that I am not going to import the goods from America. No. India can decide. Of course, India has to ensure that the rules has to be same for everyone. In order to protect, let's say, the domestic people, India cannot stop restrict the flow of trade coming from other country, or India cannot allow trade or, let's say, goods to so the rules cannot be discriminatory is what the point is, essence is. And created by, please remember this agreement, Marrakesh Agreement in 1994. So before World Trade Organization, before 1994, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade was the, let's say, agreement that was dealing with the trade rules happening in the world, or the trade being carried out in the world. So post 1994, we have WTO. Before, so such each and every point is important for your prelims examination. Now, major functions and mechanism, trade negotiations held in rounds like the Doha round to reduce tariff and trade barrier. To reduce tariff and trade barrier, which means, let's say, for example, America accuses India, stating that India, impose a heavy tariff on the American imports, which means what's happening now. Let's say a Harley Davidson is coming from America to India. The cost of Harley Davidson is 1 lakh rupees. India imposes 50% tax. And the cost of that vehicle is 1,50,000. Who is going to buy Harley Davidson? Which means now what India is trying to do is India is trying to create barrier so as to stop the flow of Harley Davidson into India. So this tries to reduce the tariff and trade barrier. So if, let's say, we are doing it, America will do the same thing. So America has imposed tariff on the Indian exports. So if each and every country indulges in tariffs, then there will be disruption in the global trade, which is not good for the global economy. Next, dispute settlement mechanism. If there is any dispute between two countries, WTO, it tries to resolve it. Trade policy review mechanism. Now, whenever any country, let's say, frames a rule for the functioning of trade, then WTO reviews the rules made by each and every country and sees whether the rules adhere to the principles and rules as framed by WTO, which means you have to follow the rules of WTO. Whenever India makes rules, then India has to ensure the rules abide by the WTO rules. India cannot give a subsidy of 20%. Why? Because it goes against the WTO rules. Now, this is what I'll explain you, right? Now, see, what's happening is America has imposed unilateral tariff, which means What WTO says is that whenever there is any issue or dispute between two countries, then you should approach WTO. Now, what America is trying to do is, without approaching WTO, America is trying to impose unilateral tariffs on different countries. So, WTO says that whenever there is a friction difference, we have a dispute resolution mechanism. You should avail the solution that we have before resorting to the step you have taken. Now, what America? Why? Because America is a powerful country. Who funds WTO? America. So, at times, WTO they refrain from taking any action against WTO. For example, in the dispute resolution mechanism, the judges who are part of the dispute resolution mechanism, America has actually blocked the appointment of judges in the dispute resolution mechanism. There are no judges to hear the case. Who is going to hear the case? There are no judges. Why? Because America has banned the appointment. Why America does? Because America has money. America funds these international organizations. So I hope you are getting understanding the point that I try to make here. And the question is, if this is how the developed countries are going to behave, is there a point in having WTO? Because tomorrow China will be a powerful country. China is already a powerful country. So if each and every country starts behaving irrationally, if they start violating the rules, is there a point to have WTO? Is a question raised. So this is the essence of the article. I hope you understood the article. Let us move on to the last topic of the day. Consider mandating minimum vote share even for unopposed candidates. This is what Supreme Court tells to center. This pertains to electoral reforms. A question has been asked in the year 2017. What is the context now? The Supreme Court has raised concern over Section 53 of RP Act. Right now, now see what the Section 53 of RPA mandates is that, let's say in a constituency, there's one constituency. Usually we see there are, let's say, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people fighting in that constituency. Not fighting, which means not physical fighting, elections, contesting elections. Of the 4 to 5 people who are contesting the election, one person wins the election. What if there is no second candidate? There's only one candidate in the constituency, which means he will be the winner. And this is what Section 53 says. Section 53 Clause 2 of RP Act mandates that when there is no second candidate to contest the elections, the lone candidate will be declared as the winner without elections. If there is no second candidate, there will be no election in that constituency. That lone candidate will be declared as a winner. This is what Section 53 Clause 2 of RP Act states. Supreme Court now has raised concern with respect to this section. The court questioned whether this process, Section 53, aligns with democratic principles and suggested introducing a minimum vote threshold. This is, the Supreme Court said that at least that person should, let's say, win 5% votes, 10% votes, 15% votes. This is what the Supreme Court has suggested to the center. Now, let's try to observe the Supreme Court observe. Democracy and majority principle. Here the Supreme Court states that democracy, which means majority. In a democracy, decisions are taken what the majority wants. Simple. But here, this Section 53 is undermining the principle of democracy. Why? Because there is no majority. Majority happens when there is a contest. There is no contest. So, which means this actually is undermining the principle of democracy, is what the Supreme Court said. Need for electoral legitimacy. What does it mean? Which means, despite the fact that there is no second candidate, that candidate still should show that people are supporting me. And how it can be shown? Only through elections. To gain legitimacy, it is important that election should happen, and the rule be set that minimum vote share of 10%, 15% should be there in order to declare that candidate winner. Third, impact of nota and voter helplessness. Now, your nota has been accepted as a form of expression. If people are not happy with any of the candidates, people can choose nota, which means nota has actually uh, been accepted as a legitimate form of expression. So if nota can be accepted as a legitimate form of expression, then why is it that people of that constituency which has no second candidate be allowed to vote? You're taking away the right to vote of the people belonging to a constituency where there is no second candidate. I hope you understood the point. So if nota can be understood or can be accepted as a legitimate form of expression, then for a constituency having one person, people should have the right to vote. Concern or manipulated withdrawals. Now what happens is that, let's say there is one constituency, there is one political party, second, third and four political parties. Now this political party is a major political party. This major political party will intimidate all the, let's say, candidates from this political party. They will give them money and they will tell them to withdraw. They'll force them, they'll blackmail them, they'll threaten them to withdraw the nomination. They withdraw. I hope you must have seen many movies, right? Progressive reform. Now, the Supreme Court has suggested that it is important that in case of default, the loan candidate should at least achieve minimum threshold of 15%, 10% to enhance electoral accountability. And lastly, the Supreme Court said that this is a suggestion from us, which means the judiciary is trying to, let's say there's a judicial dialogue. This is a discussion, because this discussion can also trigger electoral reforms, which is a good thing, which is a progressive, right? So, of course, the decision will be taken by Parliament. We are not going to take this decision. We are only trying to suggest you, because ultimately making law is the work of the Parliament and not of the Supreme Court or judiciary. Now, these are the different sections of the RPA. Now, section 53 to we already have discussed in the context. Section 33 to 36 govern the process of nomination, scrutiny, withdrawal. 62 lays down the right to vote and conditions. 126 restrict election campaign activities during the silence period. So these are the different sections. And this brings us to the end of the last topic of the day. Let us quickly go through the questions. Terrorism has evolved in form, scale, and geography, posing complex security challenges. Right? In this context, critically examine the causes, emerging trends, and security gaps, and suggest reforms. So, in the very, very simple question, in the introduction, mention what is terrorism. We already have discussed the definition of terrorism. Then, in the body of the answer, mention the emerging form of terrorism, mention the causes behind terrorism, mention the domestic framework that India has to fight terrorism, mention the security gaps, and finally the way forward. This is how you approach the answer, right? So the detailed answer is provided in the DNA notes. So anyone who wants to understand the entire answer flow, you can please read in the DNA notes. Which are the following correct? Now these are the questions based on the topics that we discussed yesterday. Judicial review. How do we distinguish judicial review from judicial activism? Judicial review is proactive while judicial activism is always reactive. Wrong. Judicial review allows courts to make laws. Wrong. Judicial review involves checking the constitutionality of laws, whereas judicial activism involves courts stepping in to address legislative. Very true. This one is the correct answer for question number 2. Next question, question number 3. Coral bleaching occurs occurs when corals expel algae due to heat stress, turning them white and making them vulnerable to death. Yes, this one is correct. The current coral bleaching event has affected less than half. No, it has affected 85%. This one is incorrect. Coral reefs support approximately 25% of all the marine species and act as natural coastal barriers. Yes. So 1 and 3, 1 and 3. Option B is the correct answer for question number 3. Moving on to next question. Sulfur dioxide primarily originates from vehicular emissions. No, it originates from the coal-fired power plants and the industries and is responsible for glacial melting. No, acid rain is responsible for glacial melting. So this one is incorrect. Methane acts as a greenhouse gas and contributes to ground level. Yes, this one is correct. B is the correct answer for question number 4. And then these are the questions from today's topics. One, POCSO. The second one is the RPA. The third one is with respect to WTO. So these are the 3 questions that is given to you as part of homework. So please open the DNA quiz in the description. Open the DNA quiz. Attempt all the 3 questions and post your score in the comment section. That's it from today's DNA. I hope you understood all the topics. Any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section. And before you end the session, I request you to please hit the like, subscribe icon and make sure you're spreading the word, you're making your aspirants or you're sharing the video to your fellow aspirants so that they can also benefit of the DNA videos that we present every day between 4 to 5 p.m. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck.